الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین دہائی دہائی خدا را دہائی یہ دشت بلا میں ہے کیسی تباہی بہایا ہے کس نے یہ خون محمد قیامت یہ ڈھائی ہے کس نے لاہی جوانوں بزرگوں کو مارا گیا ہے شہیدوں میں شامل ہے ننھا سپاہی اٹھیں اپنی میقات سے بنت محمد سیاہ شب کی چادر میں چہرہ چھپا کر گئی کربلا میں تو اس نے یہ دیکھا ہے بوسیدہ کرتے میں ایک لاش بے سر بدن سارا تیروں سے چھلنی پڑا ہے لہو میں ہے ڈوبا ہوا سارا پیک کبھی دل میں دیتی وہ ماں کو صدائے کبھی رو کے کہتی کہ بابا کہاں ہو شہیدوں کا نوحہ تھا اس کی زبان پہ ابد کس طرح اس کے غم کا بیان ہو ہمیں بھی سعادت ہو نصرت کی حاصل خدا را ظہور امام زمان ہو حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات
بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
عین سے عین عبادت کا سرانجام ہوا، عین سے عین عبادت کا سرانجام ہوا، لام وہ لام کے جس لام سے اسلام ہوا، لام وہ لام کے جس لام سے اسلام ہوا، یہ سے یاور ہوئے مشکل میں ہر ایک بندے کی، صدقے اس نام کے کیا خوب علی نام ہوا، عین سے عین صلوات۔ فاتحہ۔ بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
لاش اکبر کی جو مقتل سے اٹھا لائے حسین، نوجوان کو صف اول سے اٹھا لائے حسین، چاند کو شام کے بادل سے اٹھا لائے حسین، جابلب شیر کو جنگل سے اٹھا لائے حسین، ارے دی صدا لاشے پسر آن کے لے جا بانو، چھد گیا برچی سے اکبر کا کلے جا بانو، چھد گیا برچی سے اکبر کا کلے جا بانو، دیکھ لے آخری دیدار پسر مرتا ہے، سامنے آنکھوں کے یہ نور نظر مرتا ہے، اب کوئی دم میں میرا رقش کمر مرتا ہے، منہ سے باہر ہے زباں تشنہ جگر مرتا ہے، منہ سے باہر ہے زباں تشنہ جگر مرتا ہے، ارے دم ہے سینے میں رکا زخم سے خون جاری ہے، ہائے بانو تیرا گھر لٹنے کی تیاری ہے، ہائے بانو تیرا گھر لٹنے کی تیاری ہے، شاہ کے کاندھے پہ دیکھا علی اکبر کو نڈھا، ہاتھ پھیلا کے یہ چلائی کہ ہائے ہائے میرے لال، کیا غضب ہو گیا ہے بادشاہ نیک خصال، راس آیا نہ میرے بچے کو 18 سال، ارے ٹکڑے تیغوں سے بدن ہو گیا سارا، कौन था जिसने मेरे शेर को मारा है, अरे कौन था जिसने मेरे शेर को मारा है। देख ले आखिरी दीदार पे सर मरता है, सामने आंखों के ये नूर नजर मरता है। अब कोई दम में मेरा रक्श कमर मरता है, मुंह से बाहर है जुबां तशना जिगर मरता है, मुंह से बाहर है जुबां तशना जिगर मरता है। अरे दम है सीने में रुखा ज़ख्म से खून जारी है, हाय बानो तेरा घर लुटने की तैयारी है, हाय बानो तेरा घर लुटने की तैयारी है। लाश अकबर की जो मकतल से उठा लाए हुसैन। सलावत। सलावत।
Tonight, after the English Majlis, a Tabut Hazrat Ali Akbar alayhi salam will be taken out in this hall, and afterward will be sent downstairs in the old building for ladies to ziyarat. Tomorrow, day of Ashura program is as follow. Early morning session will start at 4:20 a.m. with Majlis Azan Hazrat Ali Akbar alayhi salam in Urdu, addressed by Maulana Syed S.Mehboob Mehdi Abidi, followed by the Salat Fajr and Amal at 8 a.m. Afternoon session will start at 1 p.m. with Salat al-Zuhrain, followed by the Majlis in English at 1:40 p.m. addressed by Maulana Syed Ali Abbas Razawi, followed by the Urdu Majlis at 2:15 addressed by Maulana Syed S.Mehboob Mehdi Abidi. Faqa Shikni is going to be at 3:35 p.m. Early evening session will start at 6:54 p.m. with Salat al-Maghribain, followed by the Majlis Sham Ghariba. Tomorrow, annual Julus Ashura will be held tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Julus will start from Thompson Center in main downtown. Parking is available at the discounted rate of $15 at 20 East Randolph. Buses are arranged to leave IEC at 9 a.m. The Day of Ashura program, all programs of Day of Ashura will be held in the newer building. There are going to be no program in this old hall. The full day of Ashura program is available on our website at IECHUSAINI.org. For Muhammad Wale Muhammad Salawat. We are extremely grateful to Maulana Syed Ali Abbas Razawi for being here in these nights and addressing the Ashra Awal Majalis. We pray that may Allah and Ahlul Bayt bless him and reward him for his service to our community. And inshallah, we are looking forward to see him more often in our center. For Maulana's health, knowledge, and continued success, please recite a loud salawat. Now I request Maulana Syed Ali Abbas Razawi to the member with a loud salawat. Can I request all adults on the stage and children with adults or parents supervision? Another salawat.
والحسين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على
Sahaba more salawat, please. Sahaba more salawat, please. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإن من شيئته لإبراهيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. Tonight our discussion finishes. What started 9 days ago has now come to its end. You've come, you've mourned, you've given your condolences. Allah bless you for your services to Ahlul Bayt. Sometimes I think to myself that it's our opportunity to thank one another, but I know that actual thanks will be given by that mother of Hussein on the day of Mahshar. Go Salah Salawat, please. And one more salawat, please. In the last couple of nights, we've looked at the aims and the objectives of life. The fact that we want to get to a higher reality. 90% of this world come into this world and then they leave from this world pretty much in the same way that they came into the world. Not realizing that there's a higher purpose, not realizing that there's a higher reality. We've not just been created from this world, but our movement is back towards absolute goodness. When a question was asked once to a desert dweller, the question was asked that, look, you see all of this injustice in the world. Why is it that you still believe in a God? And he very beautifully replied, he said, God is good, but when Adam fell from that level to this level, he moved away from that goodness. This world is the furthest point away from the absolute. And so therefore, as further you get to the world of matter, the more trials and tribulation befall us, the more restriction there is, and the more pain there is. The closer you come to that source, what you see is happiness. This is why you see that a person like Hussein ibn Ali, when it comes to the day of Ashura, what does he say? What does Allah say? Irji ila rabbik radiyatan mardiyah. That's a statement, and that's a powerful statement from his creator. The fact that he's going in peace, the fact that that peace is personified. How does one, in and of itself, if you look at it, in and of itself is very ironic. Having lost everything, but he leaves towards Allah in peace. And why is that? because he knows that he's going back to its creator. He knows the absolute source of goodness. No, he becomes the source of goodness. And each one of us has an opportunity in our life to go back to that source of goodness. But you can see that many a time in life there are things which distract us. Family, friends, our lifestyle. When you're young, you're carefree. That in itself is a distraction sometimes. This is why you notice in the tradition that if a person at a young age develops a relationship with Allah, they fly. In the last couple of nights, we've looked at personalities like Ayatollah Bahjat. He achieved what he needed to achieve by the age of 21. From 21 onwards is maintaining what he achieved. It wasn't the fact that when he was 30 or 40 or 50, he was trying to reach higher and higher. He'd achieved what he wanted to achieve. He'd done the entire motion of that journey, that cycle of spiritual perfection. The fact is, when you're young, when you're youthful, go and put effort into gaining that spirituality. Why? Because it's easy for you to do so. They say that before 40, it's very simple. After 40, it then becomes difficult. Before 40, it's there. It's for you to take, and Allah gives you chances. After 40, when you've cemented yourself, when your intellect is meant to have perfected, it becomes more difficult to go through those motions. Nevertheless, know something. Until the last moment of your breath, you still have an opportunity to climb towards Allah. Haven't you not seen when the sixth Imam says to one of his companions, 93 years old, what does he say to him? He says, still you have an opportunity to gain knowledge. This is what the door never closes. But the fact is, if we waste our time, it becomes more difficult and difficult and difficult. When it becomes extremely difficult, the only other option you have is this. The best option is what? Connection of the heart. This is why there are two types of mystics. One who tread the pathway towards Allah, but one are those people of majzoob. Within a second they go towards Allah through dua, through tears, through prayer, through love. Through the process of love, you can change your entire destiny. And this is why this night is important. From all of the other nights, there's certain nights of the year which become extremely important to change your destiny. One of those nights is Laylatul Qadr. One of those nights is the 15th of Sha'ban. But one of those nights is the night of Ashura. Tonight is the night of Ashura. And tonight, destiny changes. We have a responsibility and we have an opportunity for that destiny to change. If the heart is strong enough, Allah's made it such that you'll notice tonight, you'll see people come grief-stricken, heartbroken. And that's the best opportunity, that Allah wants to see your heart broken before you connect. What better for your heart to be broken, but to be broken for the sake of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Look, what does Imam say to Ibn Shabib? He says, even if you're praying for your own problems, let's say, to give you an example, whatever shay you're praying for, whatever interest you're praying for, just make the intention that I'm praying, that I'm crying for the sake of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Those are the power of your tears. And those are the power of your intention. So look, we talked about throughout this entire duration, things that block our pathway. Tonight I'm bringing it to a close. I'm going to give you an example. We started off on the example of shaitan. If you remember, go back. Creation of Adam takes place. Allah says, وَنَفَقْتُ فِيهِمْ مِنْ رُوحِي. When I blow a part of my soul into Adam, you prostrate. That which was being blown in was the haqiqat al-Muhammadiyya. It's the only thing that pushes the angels to prostrate. Why is that? Because that haqiqah is the Kaaba for all of Alam al-Kawn. Everything rotates around al-Insan al-Kamil. This is why when the 12th Imam walks, the entire universe is revolving around him. So that haqiqah that's being blown into Adam, otherwise Adam was there fully developed. That consciousness that was blown into him, that God consciousness that was blown into him, that DNA that was blown into him, that DNA that makes him aware of God is that haqiqat al-Muhammadiyya. That tells us that whenever your heart goes towards your shifts towards Ahlul Bayt and towards Allah, it's because there's a light of the Ahlul Bayt which is shining inside of you. Had it not been for that light, you would never have been able to understand Ahlul Bayt or Allah Himself. There's a light. So what is our purpose? To cultivate that light. Let's look at the story. Just develop it forward and see. Then what happens? After that, next stage takes place. What is the next stage? Adam is there. He's been created. Angels have been told to prostrate. Angels prostrate. At the point of prostration, one person doesn't prostrate, and that person later on is known as shaitan. Look at the evolution of shaitan itself and see. Shaitan was from the jinn. His name was Harith. He worshipped Allah. There was one problem though in his worship. There was arrogance in his worship. Worship is meant to humble you. Today, the same arrogance you see with people who are religious. They claim to be religious. They come to our centers, some religious people, but you see within their prayer there's an arrogance there. If you were to take their place in the first row, you would see how they react to you. They're not praying towards Allah, they're praying to keep their status. There's certain people like that. There's certain people who come and sit in a particular location. There's certain people who need to show off in a particular way. Why? They're maintaining their status. They're doing shirk. What Allah wants is not an arrogant there. Arrogance shouldn't be there. What you notice is that prayer is meant to make you humble. And if that humbleness isn't there, it means your prayer has not been accepted. But the more humble you become because of your prayer, the more you find that you begin to ascend towards Allah. The more that you begin to understand the true nature of the Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Bayt are not found in arrogance. Ahlul Bayt are found within humility. This is why Habib ibn Mawahir, a man who Amir al-Mu'mineen taught the knowledge of Manaya wal Balaya, when he comes to the door of Hussein, he puts his head on the door of Hussein, picks the dirt from the door of Hussein, puts it in his head, and he says, Mawla, your slave has come to you. Imagine a man like that. Can you be like Habib ibn Mawahir? Does your prayer make somebody like Sayyid Ali Qadi come into the world? How does he achieve this? Humility. He humbles himself on the door of Wilaya. In the same way, when you individuals go tomorrow for Arbain, or when you go to Sayyid al-Shuhada, I want you to remember one thing. When you come into Karbala, the first thing you need to do is to go to the door of Wilaya and to humble yourself on the door of Hussein. Where does one humble themselves? These points that I'm giving, these are the points that the Urafah have given. Don't take them lightly, apply them and you'll see that you're successful. Don't take them lightly. Who is the door of Hussein? Babul Hussein is Abbas. The first place you go is you humble yourself on the door of Abbas. When you put your head down on the door of Abbas, you'll feel energy inside of you. You'll feel love inside of you. You will feel that somebody's putting their wing over your head because they have no arms to put over your head. Right? So Abbas was compensated by Allah. He was given two wings like Ja'far at-Tayyar. Something goes over your head. Lutf of the Imam goes over your head. Look at the tradition. When a person first comes into Karbala for the first time, a voice comes. And that voice is this: Abbas, go and meet my guests, my zawar. They're my guests for 3 days. When you go to Karbala, when you go for Arbain, what are you going to see? First thing you do, humble yourself onto the door of Abbas. For every Imam you've been told, do ghusl, wear fresh clothes, go forward. When it comes to Karbala, in the very clothes that you were traveling with. Have you never seen in Arbain some of the zawar? Maybe you don't understand what they're saying. But sometimes when you sit there, you want to cry. Sometimes people come in from very far away. I've seen it. You've seen it. When they sit there, feet are blistered, clothes are covered in dirt. All they're saying to their Mawla is this: Mawla, we've been walking for 100 kilometers to come towards you. Our feet are blistered. We're thirsty. Our clothes are dirty. We've left our families, but we're coming out of your love. What do you think your Mawla says? Your Mawla does labbaik to you. Right? He greets you. He brings you into the domain of Ali Muhammad. That's what we need to understand. Therefore, when you come to the Majlis of Hussein, the same protocol needs to be there. When you come to the Majlis of Hussein, you sit there with humility. When you come to the Majlis of Hussein, you sit there observing. Why is that? Because you're coming to the Majlis of Hussein knowing that Sayyid al-Shuhada is watching you as well. You go into Karbala, the first thing you do is you put your head down, Abul Fadl Abbas. Know something, Bab al-Hawaj. Why is Allah sending you to the door of Bab al-Hawaj? Sayyid al-Shuhada once came to one alim, in Alim al-Roya. He says to him, he says, for every time you go to me, try and go the very same amount to Abbas as well. If you go to me once a day, twice a day, go to Abbas twice a day as well. Why? Bab al-Hussein, Bab al-Rahmah. You need to go through the door in the way that Rasulullah's doors Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the very same way, when you want to go to Hussein, go to the door of Abbas. And when you go to that door, humility, put your head down, put the dirt on your head, rub the dirt in your eyes. Mawla, I'm here. Please give me ijazah to go to Hussein. How do you know that your ijazah has been accepted? Go and look at the ulama, they'll tell you. All of a sudden, the heart moves tears come into your eyes. Ayatollah Bahjud would say, for every imam, the milak is the heart changing. But for Sayyid al-Shuhada, if you want to know that your ijazah has been given, majaz to go into the shrine of Hussein, tears have to come into your eyes. When one tear drops, it means Hussein says, come to me. In the same way, when you come to the Majlis of Hussein, this is why, remember now I'm going to complete what I said. On the first day I said to you that there are certain people who Imam Hussein puts their hand over their head. Karam of Hussein is there, Lutf of Hussein is there, Rahmah of Hussein is there. Why? Who are those people? They are those people who come to the Majlis of Hussein waiting for the name of Hussein to come so that they can cry. Those tears are acceptance of Sayyid al-Shuhada for your Majlis and your Azah. That's why they say when it comes to Imam Hussein's Majlis, don't ever feel embarrassed. Don't ever feel shy. Don't ever feel nervous. Heart connects to Hussein, tears come in your eyes. You know why the tears come in your eyes? Because those are Zahra's du'as that she gives towards you. You know, she prays for you. Can you believe that? That mother who saw so much pain. One day she's in Najaf, loneliness of Amir al-Mu'minin, ghurba of Amir al-Mu'minin. One day she's in Baqi, loneliness of Imam Hassan. One day she's sitting next to the splintered body of Hussein. One day she's in Sham with her daughter. One day she's sitting with her 4-year-old granddaughter. Imagine that mother with all of that pain, but she still gets time to pray for all of you. In her khalwa, she prays for you. She prays for the azadar of Hussein. She prays for your long life. She prays for your happiness. She lost all of her family, but she prays that your family is safe. So when those tears come into your eyes, those are the effects of those prayers. And if those tears don't come into your eyes, then pray to Allah, Allah also make me one of those people who cry for Hussein ibn Ali. If we could recite a salawat and move forward, please. We could move forward, please. Some of the azadar of Imam Hussein are finding it a problem to sit down. Today is going to be very full, as you know, as yesterday was. Some of you guys, if you can come onto the stage, it gives an opportunity for those people who are standing outside to come in. Recite a salawat, please. Come on the stage, don't worry about it. Come on stage. Recite one more salawat, please. One more salawat, please. One more salawat, please. You know what the most beautiful moment is? Is when we collectively come together as one body and together we mourn for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ahlul Bayt want you to be united. You know, like a father wants all of his children to be together. Your father, Rasulullah said. Somebody asked Rasulullah, you say that Ali is our father, but isn't Adam our father? He says, Adam is your physical father, me and Ali are your spiritual fathers. We control your heart and we control your soul. This is why. You cannot force it. You cannot force your tears. You notice they come out. Why? Because your heart is controlled by Amir al-Mu'minin. Your heart is controlled by Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt. Right? This is the beauty. What does it require? Submission. First stage is this. Shaitan was pushed out of the wilayat of Allah and the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Look at Shaitan. What did he have? Why was he pushed out of that wilayah? From Harith he became Azazil, the Aziz of Allah. Imagine a status like that. Angels were calling him that. Angels were. Imagine his status, imagine his prayer. When Shaitan falls, he becomes Iblis. The first sign of Iblis is that when a person becomes hopeless in the rahmah of Allah. Why did he become hopeless? 2 reasons. Firstly, arrogance. Secondly, jealousy. Jealousy is that thing that burns all of your deeds in such a way that if you were to die, you die the death of a kafir. I'll give you a story that takes place. Ayatollah Gul Paygani once was narrating in his Ba'ath al-Kharij. He said, I had a friend, and that friend of mine, we studied together in Najaf. Studied together. We used to sit down together, we studied together. Now the quality of this man was that he studied 10 times harder than I did. He studied harder than I did. He was more intelligent than I was. He was poorer than I was. 50 years went by. He gets a call. He says, come, your friend is calling you, he's about to leave this world. He went there in Qom. He goes to the house. He sees his friend is lying there, he's dying, he's leaving this world. He looks up at him and says, Sayyid, can I ask you a question? He says, yes. He says, didn't I work harder than you? He says, yes, you worked harder than me. He says, wasn't I more clever than you were? He says, yes, you were more clever than I was. He said, didn't I have less money than you? I only ate once a day, you had 2 meals a day. He says, yes, that is the case. He says, I want to ask you a question then. He says, what is that? He says, why did Allah make you into a marja and not me? He says, can you give me the Quran? He got him the Quran. This guy opens up the Quran. He spat in the Quran. He says, Allah has given an injustice upon me. Closes the Quran, dies a kafir. Why? Jealousy. Jealousy. Jealousy is that vice that if you have it in your heart, you'll die a kafir. Look, let me ask you another question. Somebody has a nicer car than you. If you feel jealous inside, God forbid they were to crash that car, you start feeling a bit of relief. That's jealousy, that's a vice. Be very careful. If a person's child is doing better than your child and you feel that jealousy, be very careful. If a person has more money than you, be very careful. You know why? Because you don't know their heart. You have a wealth greater than anyone else does, and that is the wilayat of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Allah is Raziq. Allah is Razzaq. Do you want to complain to God? Do you want to put your complaint forward? Thank Allah. If you really want to know how to increase your wealth, thank Allah. Thank Allah and give in the way of Allah. Give in the way of Allah. Maybe perhaps I should have said this yesterday, I didn't do. But I'll say it today. The secret of becoming a millionaire, if you ask any what do they do? The richest man in the world has went and donated $20 billion. You'll see his wealth will maintain. Bill Gates, $1 billion he gives, wealth maintains. Secret's very simple. You want to know how to be rich? Learn how to give. What did Ahlul Bayt do? Let me tell you the story. It's in front of you. How many gold pieces? How much was Karbala worth? 7,000 gold dinars. How much did Imam Hussein give to buy Karbala? 14,000 gold dinars. Now let's look at this. Imam Hussein, Imam Hassan, Abdullah bin Ja'far are going into a forest. When they go into that forest, one day goes by, no food, they're hungry. As they're hungry, they come to a man. The man was there, he had a sheep. They say to the man, look, oh man, we're thirsty, we're hungry. He takes the milk, he gives it to them. After that, he slaughters the only sheep he had, gives the meat to them. So Hasnain both say, if ever you come to Medina, come to us. Gets up, goes to his wife tells him off. Says, we only had one sheep, you gave 3 strangers from Medina. What do we have now? There's no milk. We have nothing left. What are we going to eat from? He said, well, they said, if there's ever a problem when you come to Medina, call upon us. So she said, do you know anything about them? He says, well, I didn't really catch their names, but I know that they're Hashimi. Says, fine. Says, let's go. The tradition says they go to Medina. As they walked into Medina, remember, nothing is a coincidence in life, especially when it comes to Ahlul Bayt. If you think certain coincidences are there, all of a sudden your ticket and you've gone to Najaf. That's not a coincidence. That's Amir al-Mu'mineen saying, come to me. Right? This is why be very vigilant, be very careful what you do. If you sacrifice in the way of the Ahlul Bayt, you give in the way of the best way of giving in the Ahlul Bayt is when nobody else knows but you and Allah. Imagine when you give. When you give, you think nobody's watching. Hussein ibn Ali is watching. Comes into Medina. His wife is saying, which road is it? How is it? As it goes, he looks up, he sees a man walking. The man is smiling at him. He says, oh person, do you know who I am? He says, are you not the person who came to take some milk from me? He says, yes, my name is Hassan ibn Ali. He says, you know, for all of the efforts that you gave, I want to give you something. He says, what is it? He says, have 1,000 gold pieces and there's 1,000 sheep for you. This guy thinks to himself, 1 sheep, and this is how much Ahlul Bayt give? Remember, Ahlul Bayt don't ever keep a debt on their shoulders. You think you're going to give in the way of the Ahlul Bayt and they're not going to give you multiplied by 1,000? 1,000 gold pieces. How much was Karbala worth? How much was Karbala? 7,000 gold pieces. Now watch what this guy does. But then Imam Hassan stops and he says, you know what? Why don't you go to my brother Hussein as well? He wants to see you as well. One imam sends to another imam. Sayyid al-Shuhada looks up. He says, have you been coming for my brother? He says, yes. He says, what did my brother give you? He says, here's 1,000 gold pieces for you as well. And there's 1,000 sheep as well. Right? Hussein, remember, what they give for a reason. They don't give a penny less. They don't give a penny more. They don't give a cent less. They don't give a cent more. Then what happens? Then he goes to Abdullah bin Ja'far. He says, go to Abdullah bin Ja'far as well. Abdullah bin Ja'far was one of the richest men in Arabia. He was known for giving. He was courageous, but he was also a giver. He gave a lot. When a person came up, even as a lion, they said, Abdullah bin Ja'far has insured us. Abdullah bin Ja'far, regardless of who it was, would insure them. They come to Abdullah bin Ja'far. Abdullah bin Ja'far just asked him a question. He says, have you been coming from Hassan and Hussein? He says, yes. He said, what did they give you? He said, 1,000 gold pieces. He said, I'll give you 1,000 gold pieces. Had you come before all those two to me, I would have given you even more than that. But out of the respect for Hassan and Hussein, I give you 1,000 gold pieces and I give you 1,000 sheep. His wife looked up and she said, I wish more people like this came so we could sacrifice more sheep. Why? She said, his generations ate from that. His generations. Imagine a ground, 2 miles worth of Karbala, half of the ownership of half of the value of Karbala, 3 people have just given. If 2 miles of Chicago worth of property you were given just for sacrificing 1 sheep, this is who Ahlul Bayt are. Sometimes you've got to substantiate it for people to understand. Now imagine this. Tonight is the 9th, 10th Shab, it's the Layl of Ashura. Imagine if you were to turn around without anyone knowing and you were to give something for the sake of the Ahlul Bayt. Hussein ibn Ali is watching. Ahlul Bayt are watching. Don't ever feel despondent by the fact that Ahlul Bayt are going to turn you away. They never turn you away. Criteria is simple. Humble yourself. Become humble and you take everything. This is why there's certain people who know how to take. They know how to take. Not everyone knows how to take from the Ahlul Bayt. Give you an example, right? We mentioned Hatim al-Tai very quickly in passing. I want to emphasize one thing. Hatim al-Tai was very famous for what? The fact that he was a giver. He used to give. This is why Rasulullah said he died before the coming advent of Islam. So somebody said, is he going to go to hell? He says, no, he's not going to go to hell. He says, why? He had the 5 qualities we were talking about yesterday. He's a giver. When he died, his son said, I want to be like my father. So grandmother was there. She says, you can't be like your father. He says, your father was your father from birth. He was a giver from birth. You can't be like your father. He says, how difficult is it to be like my father? She said that your father, when he was a child, used to give, used to snatch from other children. Your father's your father. He said, no, I want to be like my father. Now, Hatim had died 40 doors. He had a palace, 40 doors. One person used to come knock on one door. Person used to come on the other door. He would go, he would give. He would give at one door, change his clothes, go to the next door, change his clothes, go to the next door. Purpose of this, nobody recognizes him. His humility is humbleness. Hatim al-Tai's son sitting there. Knock on the door comes. An old woman is there. He looks out, sees the old woman, grabs everything that he had, gives it to her. 5 minutes later, knock on the second door. He opens it up. Same woman. He looks up at her and says, didn't I just give you on the first door? She looks at him and she says, is Hatim al-Tai dead? He said, how do you know? He said, I would go to 40 doors, he never turned me away. Right? That's the person who's giving. Salman comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, Mawla, who's more giving, you or Hatim al-Tai? Amir al-Mu'mineen looks up and he says, Salman, if a person comes to my door once, he doesn't need to go to anybody else's door. I will give him so much. On nights like this, why don't we go to the door of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Why don't we go to the door of Madhar al-Ajaib? Why don't we go to the door of Hussein? Ahlul Bayt, when they give, right? So now, coming back to the story. Shaitan falls. 2 things. First thing is this, first thing of shaitan. Arrogance, second thing, jealousy. Remove from your heart any jealousy that you have for anybody else. Feel in your heart, Ahlul Bayt are there for you. Rasulullah is there for you. Allah is there for you. Then what happens? Adam comes into the world. Adam has 2 sons, Habil and Qabil. One kills the other. Why? Again, jealousy. One kills the other. Why? Jealousy. Why did he become jealous? Allah gave one brother prophecy. What did he give? He says to Adam, give him 3 things. Stay with me, it's very important. 3 things. Give him 3. What is it? Ilm, Ism Adam, the barakat of the Anbiya. 3 things. Ilm, Ism Adam, the barakat of the Anbiya. This is how you can even understand an Imam. If you want to know how or who the Imam is, they'll always have 3 things. The barakat of the Anbiya, Ilm, Ism Adam. Qabil wanted that. He wanted this. Why? Because it was attractive to him. So what does Adam say? He says, look, this is not my amr, it's the amr of Allah. He says, ask your Allah then. He says, fine. What does Allah do? Gives him a test. Test is what? Sacrifice something for the sake of Allah. One brother brings the juiciest sheep that he could bring. The other one brings the worst vegetation that he could bring. One was a farmer, sheep farmer. The other one was what? A crop farmer. One brings the worst crop, one brings the best. Tomorrow when you sacrifice or you give something in the way of Allah, don't give the most ripped clothes that you have and give it to us charity because you can't wear them anymore. What do we do sometimes? That cloth that doesn't fit us with 2 buttons broken, shall we chuck him away? No, there must be some poor boy out there that could utilize this. But we give the worst. Here the lesson is being given to you. If you want to be like a prophet, give the best. Give the best if you want to be like a prophet. Milak of the prophet is that when they come to giving, they give the best. What you want for yourself, want for other people. There's a second criteria of prophecy as well. And you know what that is? I'll give you a story of Dhul Kifl. I didn't complete it yesterday, and I'm going to complete it today. Dhul Kifl as a prophet, you know how he became a prophet? 3 things. Allah gave the hukum to him. Says the first thing that you need to do is I want you to pray all night and fast all day and never lose your temper. So what would he do? Fast the whole day, pray the whole night. Shaitan one day said, let me test his temper, see how he is. He would go to sleep when the sun of Fajr would rise. As he's about to close his eyes and he's just got to sleep, and that sleep, as you know, is the best sleep. Bang, bang, bang on the door. Gets up, opens the door. A man was standing there. It was Shaitan, but a man was standing there. He says, oh person, I've been oppressed. Can you help me? He said, who's oppressing you? He says, so-and-so person from so-and-so village. He says, go to him and say, Dhul Kifl says not to oppress you. Quietly comes back, but his sleep is gone. One day goes by. Next day goes by. Again, eye closes. Just about that minute he's about to sleep, again, knock on the door comes. Again he gets up. Again he opens the door. Again the man is there. He says, I went there, but he didn't believe me. He says, fine, take my ring and give it to him and said, Dhul Kifl says, don't oppress him. Again, doesn't sleep. 3rd day comes. 3rd day comes, just about to sleep. Again, the knock on the door comes. Now imagine, 3 nights you haven't slept. What would you do? What would you do? Redesign his jaw, right? What did Dhul Kifl do? Opens the door. He says, what happened this time? He says, the person still isn't accepting. He says, fine, let me come with you. As Dhul Kifl begins to walk with them, this man shrieks and disappears, saying, surely this is a prophet of Allah. You can be like that. You know why? Because Rasulullah said, the ulama of my nation will be equivalent to the Anbiya of Bani Israel. You will see patience, hilm, ilm. Not everyone, but there's somewhere, some place you find Alim Rabbani. And when that Alim Rabbani comes, his heart changes your heart. 40 days, they say. If it goes without you meeting Alim Rabbani, your heart begins to die. This is why make a connection with the ulama who appeal to your heart. You know it in your heart. You know, they say sadaqah changes destiny, right? Sadaqah changes destiny. How do you give sadaqah? So somebody asked the question, how do you give sadaqah? Even a smile is sadaqah. If you were to take away stones from the road, that's sadaqah. Why? Because it's the antithesis of shaitan. What is shaitan? Shaitan is not just a person. Any human being that gives pain to another human being is shaitan. In the story in the Quran, 9 times when Iblis is mentioned, right, in creation, that is a particular person. But shaitan is not just a person, it's a jins in and of itself, it's a being in and of itself. Human beings can be satanic, jins can be satanic. What is a satanic person? Who causes pain for another person. Sometimes people, members of your own family who cause you pain, have those qualities of shaitan, right? But so, how do you remove that? Remove difficulty from people's life, that is sadaqah. Person's walking across the road, let's say you're walking down Chicago, you know a blind man is coming. To help that blind man and to remove any obstacles is known as sadaqah. Because of that sadaqah, Allah will remove problems that may befall you. So potential that there's a problem that may befall, Allah removes it very quickly. Why? Because He's helping out one of my slaves. Here Allah's creation doesn't have a title to it that He's a Muslim, He's a non-Muslim and otherwise. Any human being in creation. Anyone you help. This is how people come to you. Especially it's more important to have this kind of akhlaq, living where you live. To be a good citizen. Doesn't Ayatollah Sistani say that? Don't your Maharaja say that? In the country that you live in, be the best citizen so people can look at you and know, these are the followers, Ja'far ibn Muhammad and as-Sadiq. So be the best that you can be. Be the best citizen that you can be. Like if you feel that you can't be the best citizen and if you hate it so much, then go somewhere else. But if you're willing to stay, then be the best that you can be. And let's be honest. You're not here to leave now. You're here to stay. This is your homeland. You have a love for your country. Everyone does. I have a love for my country. You have a love for your country. So manifest that by being the best citizen that you can be so people can then look at you and say, these Shias are different. Imam Hussein has told them something different. Look, let me tell you something. Shiism is not a country. Shiism is not a geography. Shiism is not a race. Shiism is a faith. 450 million people in the world. It's a faith. It's a faith. Don't ever let anybody marginalize us and put us into brackets. We're not that. Shiism is a faith. Islam is a faith. There are 7 cultures that made the Islamic civilization. The most well-spoken language in all of Islam today, people who follow it, is Urdu, by the way. There are more Muslims in the subcontinent than there are within the Middle East. Right? The largest country in the world of Muslims is Indonesia. The most Sadat in the world are from Indonesia. Right? They're not from India, Pakistan, or Iraq, or Iran, or Lebanon, or Saudi Arabia, or all the way. The most children of Ahlul Bayt are found within Indonesia. Ask yourself the question, how did they get there? How did they get there? It was because of Azad they got there. 8th Imam alayhi salam, 4 years, what did he do? He said to all of his family, go as far and wide as you can. Now that Ma'mun has given me respite for 4 years, I know after 4 years I won't be alive anymore. Go far and wide. You know, when you tie those Imam Zamin on your arms, you know whose sunnah that is? That's the sunnah of the 8th Imam. He used to give coins to people and say that tie them on your arm. If ever there's a problem, take those coins out, show the guards, and when they see that this is my coin, they'll let you free. It was in that period of time when the Shias of the Ahlul Bayt went far and wide, from Burma towards Indonesia and so forth, tips of China. Today in Africa you find descendants of the Prophet. Today you find in Yemen. You find in India, you find all the way that way, and then you go all the way this way. Even within East Europe today, there are still descendants of the Ahlul Bayt who went far and wide just so for the fact that they could be protected. It was the 8th Imam who made Azadari open like it is today. Right? So the roots are there. You go to see, when you go to Indonesia, you still find the graves of Imam Zadeh who were there. Children, descendants of the Imam, according to them. Whether they are or not, that's not our business. The fact is that when there's a shabih of something, then it becomes holy for us. Right? So if there is not. Look, today there are 2 graves of Sayyidah Zainab. 2 graves. One is in Sham, one is in Cairo. Ulama have ikhtilaf. Ayatollah Bahjat said the one in Cairo is the right one. Ayatollah Tabrizi said the one in Damascus is the right one. Whichever it is, we know either Zainab-e-Kubra or Zainab-e-Sughra is one or the other. For us, it doesn't make a difference. When people go today, many of my Sunni friends who go to Cairo, they say that all of our du'as, whatever we've asked for, comes true. I remember speaking to a friend of mine once. I said to him, you're going to Sharm el-Sheikh for a holiday, just take a plane and go to Cairo. He says, fine. He took a plane to Cairo. He went to the shrine of Sayyidah Zainab. When he walked in, he said, whatever my heart had as hajat, by the time I got home, through the sadaqah of that lady, my hajat had been fulfilled. Right? So we also have an opportunity. Connection. Make that connection. Anyhow, coming back to the discussion. Look and see how far wide. this azar spread. Look and see how far wide descendants of Ahlul Bayt went. We've been given an opportunity that you've come here. You have no Harun or Ma'amun or Mutawakkil stopping you. You're free to do whatever you want. There's freedom of religion. So spread this. The time that you have, spread this message. Anyhow, coming back to our discussion, two things. What was shaitan? There's an arrogance there was a jealousy there. What happened with Habil and Qabil? Same thing, jealousy. One killed the other. When one killed the other, why did he kill him? Why did he kill? Look, shaitan comes and shaitan says one thing. Look at the words that shaitan uses. He says, tomorrow your brother's progeny will feel that they're superior to your progeny. Kill him now before he has any children, so that what happens? So that your progeny is not seen as inferior. Jealousy, awlad, biggest test of awlad. Go back and see. Zubair was one of us, his son misguided him. Right? Sometimes your children can misguide you. Sometimes your husband, your wife, so forth. You see all of this. What is important? Allah can test you. Doesn't He say in the Quran, khawf, He tests you with fear, hunger, family, rizq. All of these things are tests. Know that Amir al-Mu'mineen says, the day you claim to be my follower, you're going to be tested. You think it's easy? You just say that, yes, Ali, I'm your Shia. You're not going to be tested. You're going to be tested. You're going to be tested. You're going to be tested with your family. You're going to be tested with rizq. You're going to be tested with all sorts of things. How do we overcome that? When you submit and say, Mawla, okay, you're testing me, but your heart is also very soft. If you're going to test me, then also lift me up as well. And you'll see. You know, there's a There's a German saying that says, how low can you fall? The lowest point you can fall is the hand of God. Then Allah lifts you. Submit yourself to the hand of God. You'll see Allah will lift you. It's our responsibility. And I'm not just saying it to you, I'm saying it to myself. We're together in this. We're journeying together through the wilayat of the Ahlul Bayt. Look, I'm going to accelerate. My time is very fast running. I'm going to accelerate. Habil-Qabil incident takes place, right? Habil's wife was pregnant. She was pregnant. Sheath Hibatullah becomes the prophet. What happens? When he has children, they start intermarrying with Habil's children. One brother goes towards Iraq, the other brother goes towards Yemen, the other progeny. That progeny that goes towards Iraq, if you look at the Babylon, the beginning of the cradle of civilization takes place, right? Now I'm going to accelerate. I'm not going to give you a history lesson. I'm just going to go very quickly. Hibatullah was told, be very vigilant of Qabil's children. So he went, he said, hide the Ism Azam, hide this power. Qabil was in touch, linked to the jinns. Magic starts to develop by the second or third generation. There are two parallel streams running, one of magic, one of this ilm and ma'rifah, wilayat. Wilayat has been sent from chest to chest in the same way darkness is being sent chest to chest. There's two parallel journeys which are taking place. Look, we don't have enough time to go into the entire discussion of this. The only thing I can say is this. Then go back into the time of the Bani Israel. You had what? Two angels who came down. Right? Who were those two angels? Two angels. In fact, there were three. One went back up when the angel said, why have you made man Khalifatullah, one on us? Allah says, because man is shahwa, he commits sin, but when he opposes the shahwa, when he opposes this, then we raise him higher than the angels, right? Harut and Marut, the magic of the two angels that came down. What did they do? People asked them questions, they taught magic to the people, and they taught how to break the magic as well. Anyhow, Harut and Marut, the entire magic is, I don't want to say you can read it, but it's still in the libraries of Qom. You can probably go and get the books out and it's all there. But the fact is this was then taught. Then what happens after this? By the way, magic is haram. Just bear that in mind. So Seher in our religion is haram. This is just a story. We're just giving you the narrative. Don't go out and try and find books on it. Remember one thing. Awarith, when you do something negative, Allah always puts Causality puts something negative. You know these people who do all of these things, you find that their life is not a good life. Ulum al-ghariba sometimes is such that Allah removes barakah from them. They will die muflis. They will die in a state of depression, or they will die in a state of pain. So whatever you do, don't ever go towards these things. Don't ever do any of these things. This is why they say, look towards dua. Look towards prayer. Look towards dhikr of Allah. Why is this important? Don't ever go through that route. You may think that temporarily is beneficial, but it's not beneficial. It will destroy you in this world and in the hereafter. And you'll find khasrat ad-dunya wal akhirah. You're finished in both realms. Don't go into this wadi, as they say. Anyhow, move on. You find two streams are running. One stream is one side, one stream is another side. As you see, Nuh. Who is Khidr, for example? If you look at the story of Khidr, who is Khidr? Khidr was Hujjatullah in Alam and Malakut. Musa was Hujjat of Allah in Alam and Mulk. When Musa felt that there was no one more knowledgeable than him, it was Haqq. Nobody in this world was. Allah didn't like him even saying that, even though he was a prophet. What does he say? He goes, there's somebody more knowledgeable. Now imagine, and true alim is a person, when they know that there's somebody more knowledgeable, they humble themselves. Says, Allah, I want to meet him. Says, go, Majmal Bahrain, you'll meet him. When they get there, he doesn't recognize him. The fish comes alive. All symbology, we don't have time to go into it. Some of the Urafa have said that pool that they met in, that was the fountain of youth. This was made from the tajalli of Ali Akbar alayhi salam. Look, you've understood Abbas, now understand Ali Akbar. Hussein has Allah has two parts, Jamal and Jalal. Insani Kamil has two parts, Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abbas and Ali Akbar. Jalal of Hussein is Abbas. Jamal of Hussein is Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar, understand, he's Babul Hawaij as well. Babul Hawaij. Have you ever taken the wasila of Ali Akbar? I tell you from my personal experience, within seconds, within hours, within days, you take the wasila of Ali Akbar to Imam Hussein and you see that your dua is answered. If ever see, the biggest neglect that we do, when we go to Karbala, the first thing you do is you run to Imam Hussein. You forget the fact that on Imam Hussein's feet is his son. If you were to go to his son and seek permission to speak to Imam Hussein, imagine how happy your Mawla would be. Right? Look at the traditions and see. A person who goes to Mashhad and neglects Ma'sum Yaqum, their ziyarah is not accepted. So imagine if a person goes to Hussein and both of his sons are there. Now if you imagine you go to Ali Akbar and you hold on and you say, Ali Akbar, please intercede for us in front of your father. Hussein, as a father, what is he going to feel? This father sitting here. If you were to respect a son, how does a father feel? Feels proud. Imagine if a son's like Ali Akbar. Imagine how he feels then, right? So, move on. What was Khidr? Khidr is important. Why? The entire dua Kumail is actually dua of Khidr. Khidr teaches us the ma'arif of Sayyid al-Shuhada. When he begins and he says, Allahumma inni yasaluka bi rahmatika allati wasi'at kulla shay. What is this rahmah that contains all of creation? Rahmatullah al-wasi' as Hussein ibn Ali. Sit down and do ta'weel of dua Kumail itself. You see, all you find is Karbala in that dua. This is why Ayatollah Behjad, his son said to me, he said, from the beginning we opened our eyes up to the day that he died. On the 21st of Ramadan, daytime, he would recite the ziyarah of Khidr. Why? Because Khidr had a ma'rifah. He understood who Ahlul Bayt were. And we go through the wasila. He used to say, wasila of Khidr, you'll see that you come towards. Why? Because Khidr is linked with Alam and Malakut. And Ahlul Bayt's domain encompasses both Mulk and Malakut. Right? Anyhow, accelerating the discussion. I want to take it to a place. We have very limited time to do this. I'm going to move very fast. Khidr. Right? Look at the Prophet Idris. What does the Prophet Idris teach? Ulum al-Ghariba. Today, Ulum al-Ghariba is taught by occult sciences, Idris. Anyhow, we go. Develop the argument. It goes, Nur is traveling now. Nur travels to Ibrahim. From Ibrahim, the Nur divides Ismail and Ishaq. Ishaq has a son, Yaqub. Yaqub's title is Israel. From that day onwards, all of his children are known as Bani Israel. Ismail has children as well, the Bani Ismail. Go today, look at Christian theology, some of their books. What does it say? After the destruction of the first temple, The high priest went to a country. Where was it? They went to Hijaz. Who did they seek sanctuary with? Bani Ismail. You can prove from other than Islamic books that Tabut al-Sakina actually was taken by those high priests given to the line of the prophecy of the final prophet. This is why when Amir al-Mu'minin came, he had all of the relics of the Anbiya, right? Now remember, what is the sign of a prophet? Relics of the Anbiya, Ilm, and Ism A'adham. Right? All these three things are there. Look at the children of Bani Israel. Look at the Bani Israel in and of itself. Prophecy, prophet to prophet to prophet, right? Comes to Yaqub. Reason I'm taking to Yaqub is very important. Reason is this. Remember what we were talking about, thy neighbor. Let's go back and see. Spreading this message to Imam Hussein's message forward. Ibrahim teaches us something. Ibrahim teaches us feed people. You know, we have our brothers today who are going out, taking time out of their life in the name of Imam Hussein going to feed people. This is Sunnah Ibrahimi. I'll give you a story now. You know why Yaqub was separated from Yusuf? Khura Amali narrates, compiler of Wasail or Shia. He says one day a Waliullah came and knocked on the door of Yaqub. Now look at Yaqub. Yaqub had a particular time, let's say 7 to 9. He would feed people. Ibrahim never ate alone. Remember one thing, animals eat alone, human beings eat together. Muslim bin Aqil, right? When he was about to be killed, Muslim bin Aqil says, I have a debt. Sell it and pay off my debt. So people asked, but you've only been here for a couple of days. What debt have you raised? He said that I didn't have any money to feed people. I collected money so that I could feed people. I could sit with people because I don't sit alone. It is not the sunnah of Ahlul Bayt to eat alone. Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt is even if a person is walking on the road, you grab him in and say, come and eat with me. Sharing is the sunnah of the Ahlul Bayt. Yaqub at a time, let's say 7 to 9. A man comes at 9:30, knocks on the door. Yaqub says, I don't have anything now. My time is expired. This man goes into the forest. Yaqub didn't realize, his children didn't realize this is the Waliullah. Raises his hand and said, Allah, I went to your Nabi, he turned me away. Allah does wahi. He said, you sent my Wali away, I'll make sure that Yusuf is separated for you from 30 years. Look at that, it happened. Yaqub cried then. Imagine, the higher you get in Ma'rifah, the bigger your test is. If you claim to be a Shia today, your test will be most heavier. People say, well, why is it that we get tested? No, you get tested because your reward is higher than that. So today, don't feel scared. The most important thing is repent. Secrets are there. What do? Give in the way. Feed people. Feed people. Feed people. This is why they say kafara is what? 60 people. Feed them. Doesn't say kafara standing all night praying 1,000 units of prayers. Allah wants you to feed people. This is why if ever somebody is sick and you feel that your child is so sick that he's not getting better or she's not getting better, go and feed somebody. If you feel that there's a trial and tribulation that's befallen you that you can't, go and feed somebody. What happened? Yaqub, Yusuf incident takes place. But now look, when is Yaqub united with Yusuf? Look, 30 years ago, knock on the door comes, Jibreel is there. Yaqub cries. He knows Yusuf is alive. He cries so much because of the separation of his son. Look at a father's love. Look at a father's love. Knows that his son is there, separated from his son. Jibreel comes in. He says, Yaqub, why do you cry for? He says, I'm separated from my Yusuf. He said, Yaqub, who was feeding Yusuf for 30 years? He says, Allah was. He says, Yaqub, why do you worry then? He says, Jibreel, Yusuf was my mirror that I saw Allah in. Sometimes I think to myself, why did Hussein keep on looking at Ali Akbar for? He says, Yusuf was my mirror. He says, submit, submit. 30 years later, he just gave it up, submitted. When he submitted, a voice came, Yusuf is back. Right? Submitted. But imagine Hussein, doesn't take him 30 years to submit. On the word go, what does he say? رِضًا بِقَضَائِهِ وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ. Tomorrow you're going to be reciting this. You're going to be walking and reciting Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. رِضًا بِقَضَائِهِ وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ. You're going to be reciting this. You're going to be walking. You're going to be remembering Sayyid al-Shuhada tomorrow. Look, we only have a couple of hours left, and Hussein is only here for a couple of hours. It's going, our time is leaving us. Couple of hours left, that's it. Asr Ashur is less than 24 hours away. What is the time now? Tomorrow, this time, 12 hours tomorrow, your children are going to be mourning their children. Your women are going to be mourning their women. You're going to be mourning them. Ahlul Bayt. I want to give you a story before we come on to the Masaib. You know, today's Masaib is the most painful Masaib. You know, when I say Ali Akbar, I can see fathers in this room. I know you have young sons. When your tears, I can see your tears, I know you have young sons. A father feels the pain. Awlad. You know, a father can't cry in front of somebody, right? So a father hides and he cries. Do you know Hussein didn't cry in front of anybody either? When he was alone though, he cried. He was alone, he cried. Why? Awlad. It's a difficult trial and tribulation. Tonight pray. Let's pray together that whoever is separated from their children, Allah unite them with their children. Honestly, you know how difficult it is? How difficult it is? Allah unite people who are separated from their children on nights like these. Those children who don't listen to their parents, you know, tonight you don't know what pain your parents go through. Imagine Imam Hussein's journey that he had. Look, I want to give you just one story, then we go on to the Masaib. If you can take this story. Somebody came to Sayyid Mehdi Bahrul Ulum once. He said, Sayyid Mehdi, marja of the time. He said, water has come into the grave of Abbas. Can you come and help us remove the water? He says, fine. Dresses in white clothing, goes down, Sardab, starts taking the water out. As he was taking the water out, one of the Khadim asks him a question. He says, Sayyid Mehdi, you ulama recite, Abbas was so tall. But Sayyid, the grave is so small. Said Mehdi, why is the grave so small for? Says Sayyid Mehdi, because to hit his head on the wall. He says, I wish you never asked me that question. Do you know what happened? He said, what? He said, when Abbas's neck was chopped off, his body was put down onto the ground. Horses were trampling over his body in such a way that when Imam Zain al-Abidin came, he says, salam on my uncle. He used to lift the rib up, the shoulder collapsed. He lift the leg up, the hip collapsed. He got all of the pieces of Abbas together, put him in the grave. I don't know how to start. I just remember a time when a son died in London a number of years ago. He was 16 years old. The father would try and stand up, his legs would give way and fall down. When the day came to bury his son, I saw that father age. From having no white hairs, his beard was almost white. Pressure does fall on a person like this. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to recite today. Let me narrate to you something. Tradition says, tonight is the night of Ali Akbar. One day a caravan goes from Kashan. That caravan travels to Karbala. The night is a Thursday night. I can't recite all of it, I'm going to just recite a part of it. Night is a Thursday night. On that night, they say that the caravan goes to the Haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada. 40 people. In the Haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada, they recite the Masaib of Ali Akbar. They say, eyewitnesses say, it was as if the walls were crying. That's how much it was shaking, the walls were crying. Said that night all 40 go to sleep, all 40 see in a dream. You know what they see? A man comes forward and he says, stand up, get ready. Sayyidul Shuhada is coming to greet you. So they turn around and they say, why is our Mawla coming to us for? We could have come to him. The reply comes, no. Hussein comes to all of those people who come and do ziyarah of Hussein. At that moment, Imam Hussein comes forward and he says that there's a khadim in your city. That khadim takes the shoes of my azadar and he straightens the shoes out. Give him our salam as well. Tell him Hussein gives salam and Hussein prays for him. For all of those people who are the khuddam of Sayyid al-Shuhada, all of these people who volunteer, tonight let me tell you something. When Ali Akbar's Masayib is recited, Hussein gives you salam. All of those people who from the chai, to the tabarruk, to the shoes, to cleaning, what bigger status do you have than your gharib mawla from Karbala giving salam to you? Then he continues and he says, oh my zawar, if ever a Thursday night comes, it's my haram, it's Thursday night. Don't ever recite the Masayib of Ali Akbar. He says, why Mawla? He says, I can take it, but my mother Zahra can't take it. She says to me, Hussein, how was it possible that you were standing there watching this take place to your son? But my heart can't. I know you won't be able to take it. My heart can't take it. I'm just going to recite to you 3 widas that took place. Why? Because Zahra likes these 3 widas. It breaks the heart of the 12th Imam. He said the day of Ashura comes. I'm going to recite slowly. Day of Ashura comes. Sayyid al-Shuhada says to Ali Akbar, it's time to go into the battlefield, son. He says, but before you go, there's 3 widas that I want you to give. He says, who? He says, go to your brother, go to your aunt who raised you, go to your mother. Ali Akbar, the first place he goes to the tent of Imam Zain al-Abidin. He starts kissing his hands, starts kissing his neck. Maybe he knew something was going to happen on his neck. He kissed his feet as well. He kissed his forehead. Imam Zain al-Abidin opens his eyes. He says, brother, what has befallen you that you're crying like this? Ali Akbar couldn't say anything, but he just says one thing. He just replies one thing. He says, Baqiya abuna, ghariban, wahidan, adshanan, mazluma. He says, our father is mazloom. He's alone. He has nobody left. He's thirsty. You know what Imam Zain al-Abidin says? He looks up and he says, bring me my stick and bring me my sword. Falls again. Ali Akbar gets up. He goes into the second tent. Whose tent was it? Sayyidah Zainab. Puts his head on the lap of Sayyidah Zainab. Zainab starts putting her hand through his hair. Ali Akbar. He just says one thing. He says, aunt, do you give me ijazah to go into the battlefield? She says, son, ijazah is okay from me, but your mother raised you. Why don't you go to your mother and ask her for ijazah? Tradition says when Ali Akbar comes into the tent of his mother, Layla, old mother was sitting there. She looks up and she says something. Without Ali Akbar saying anything, she says, son, I'm old now. I don't have anyone in this world. I only live by looking at your face. That's all she says. Ali Akbar doesn't want to say anything more. He just comes and he whispers something. He says, mother, if on the day of Mahshar, my grandmother Fatima Zahra comes and says, Layla, my son Hussein was killed and your Ali Akbar stayed alive, what are you going to say? She says, son, go. They say as Ali Akbar comes out of the tent, look, I'm going to recite slowly. I've seen how you cried the last couple of days. I don't want anyone to pass out today. So slowly, Ali Akbar comes out. When Ali Akbar comes out, they say an old father was standing on the door. His back was slightly bent. He says something very painful. He says, son, from the age of 7 you were wearing amama. The first amama Zainab tied. After that, your mother used to tie your amama. Says, son, I was waiting for the day that you would be married so that I could tie your amama around your head. He puts his hands together. He says, son, do I have permission that for once, let me tie your amama on your head? Ali Akbar puts both of his knees on the ground. They say when Rasulullah in the battle of Badr was tying the imama on Amir al-Mu'mineen's head, he was reciting Nasru min Allahi wa Fatun Qareeb. Sayyid al-Shuhada, old father, begins to tie the imama and he begins to recite Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. One of the Ravi says, he comes to Sayyid al-Shuhada and he says, I've never seen any of the shaheed like this. He said, what are you saying? He's saying every time this young man wants to come out of the tent, I can see it lifts up, then it closes again. Lifts up and it closes again. He said, what is happening? He's saying that his aunts are holding him. Saying that his sister is holding him. You know what the riwayat says? It says, Ali Akbar tries to come out of the tent, he couldn't come out. Sayyid al-Shuhada goes into the tent, grabs Ali Akbar by the arm and he brings him out. When he brings him out, Ali Akbar gets on the horse. Imagine an old father putting his son on the horse. When he puts his son on the horse, he says one thing. He says, son, you're going into the battlefield, but every time you go forward, just turn back and look at my face as well. One Christian narrator says, he says, I saw something strange. I felt sorry for Hussein. He says, what did you see? Mukhtar asked him, he says, what did you see? He says, as this young man's horse accelerated, an old father accelerated running. He was old though, he would trip over, fall onto the ground, lift himself up again, try and run again, trip over again, fall down again. Every time he fell down, he said, I felt sorry for him. A time came when Ali Akbar looks back and he just says one thing. He says, Father, why are you following me for? The reply comes, son, if only you had a son like mine, you'd feel what your old father is feeling as you're going into the battlefield. Ali Akbar goes into the battlefield, Sayyid al-Shuhada is watching. Sayyid al-Shuhada is watching. You know what the tradition says? The tradition says that when a man comes, a very big man, comes onto the battlefield, Layla was watching as well. And she watches. Imam Hussein knew she can't take it. You know what she says? He comes forward and he says, I've heard from my grandfather that when a mother does dua, the dua becomes mustajab. He says, can you go in and pray for your son? And one of the maqatilas says, it says, Layla goes inside of the tent, she goes on her musalla, she opens up her hair, she raises up her hands, she says, Ya Radda Yusuf ila Yaqub, wa Radda Ismail ila al-Hajra. Says, for the sake of the thirst of Hussein, bring back Hussein's son to him. Tradition says, Ali Akbar comes back. When Ali Akbar comes back, you know what the riwayat says? It says that he says, Father, I'm thirsty. Now, ulama have discussed this. What does thirst mean here? What does thirst mean here? They say Ali Akbar knew that Hussein is thirsty. He knew he's thirsty. Ulama said, as long as the eye of imamat is on Ali Akbar, nothing can touch him. Father looking, eye of imamat was there. Ali Akbar was saying, remove your eyes so that I can go and do jihad, so that I can die for your sake, right? They say Hussein ibn Ali now moves his head and says, son, go into the battlefield. In the tradition it says Ali Akbar goes into the battlefield. He fights valiantly. Umar ibn Sa'd gives the hukum to a guy by the name of Hasin ibn Nubair. He says, go and kill this young man. so that his father can weep over him. They say Hussein ibn Nubayr takes a lance in his hand. As he begins to chuck the lance, Hussein ibn Ali is watching. Remember, Ibrahim had tied his eyes, but Hussein ibn Ali is watching. Lance goes, it hits the back of Ali Akbar. As it goes inside, Hussein ibn Nubayr says, maybe the father hasn't seen, tries to grab him and lift him up. Lance breaks, Ali Akbar falls to the ground. As he falls to the ground, the only shaheed in all of Karbala to say, Father, don't come, is Ali Akbar. He says, Father, don't come onto the battlefield. He says, why, son? He says, because you're an old father and I'm a young son. In the riwayat it says, Hussein chucks himself off his horse, falls on the ground, tries to lift himself up on his hands and his knees, begins to crawl on his hands, on his knees. And the Maqtal Hur Amali says that Hussein calls for someone. He says, Ali, Ali, Ali. Hur Amali writes, he says maybe he wasn't calling Ali Akbar, but he was calling his father from Najaf to say, Father, come and help me. They say Hussein crawls somehow, comes to the body of Ali Akbar. The riwayat says something, Ali Akbar was moving like a cattle moves when for the first time you cut its neck, right? It begins to move. He was moving like this, but he was hiding something. One tradition says that when the head of Ali Akbar was brought into Sham, there was a Christian woman looking at the head. She kept on looking at the head. Layla didn't like it. She comes forward and she says, why are you looking at the head of Ali Akbar for? She says, the only reason I'm looking is I'm praying to Allah that I pray that the mother was dead before this head was cut and raised. Hussein now comes. He says, open your hands so that I can take out this part. The tradition says he puts one knee on the ground of Karbala, one knee on the chest of Karbala, holds on to the broken spear, looks up, faces Najaf, says, Father, come and help me. You ripped the doors of Khaybar with 2 feet. I'm ripping this lance from the chest of Ali Akbar, rips it out. Ali Akbar begins to move. Earthquake comes. Imam Zain al-Abidin says, what's happening? Sayyidah Zainab says, look yourself. Tent is opened up. What does he see? An old father, son on the back. He's crawling back to the tent. At that moment, Imam Sajjad just says one thing. He says, Assalamu alayka, Ya Aba Abdullah. Body is brought back. Body is brought back. All of Banu Hashim come, all of the women come to give condolences. Final thing. Everyone comes back to give condolences. They say, Layla's not coming. Layla's not coming. Say the Shuhada says, Fidda, go to Layla and see why she's not coming. In the riwayat that says, when Fidda goes into the tent, she sees Layla holding onto the sides and she was falling and she was getting up again and she was falling. Fidda asks Layla, why are you not coming? She just says one thing. She says, when I heard Ali Akbar is being killed, Fidda, my eyesight went. I'm trying to find the entrance to the tent so that I can come out and I can give my condolences. Matam Hussain.
हाय हाय अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर, कहती थी ये माँ खूं भरी मई या चल पकड़, हाय हाय अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर, कहती थी ये माँ खूं भरी मई या चल पकड़, ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ارمان تپہناؤں گی پوشاک شاہانی ارمان تپہناؤں گی پوشاک شاہانی افسوس کے رسائی نہ تجھ کو یہ جوانی کیسا تھا مقدر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر اتنا تو ذرا ٹھہرو تمہیں دولہا بنا لوں اتنا تو ذرا ٹھہرو تمہیں دولہا بنا لوں بس ایک جھلک سحر کی صبح کو دکھا لوں بے چین تھی خواہر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر 18 برس پال کے پروان چڑھایا 18 برس پال کے پروان چڑھایا وہ گیسوں والا ہے میرا ہوں میں نہایا یہ کیا ہوا دل بر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ماں تیری جدائی میں بلا کیسے جیے گی ماں تیری جدائی میں بھلا کیسے جیے گی مر جائے گی صغرا جو خبر تیری سنے گی اب کیا کروں جی کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر کہتی تھی ماں خوب بھری میت سے لپٹ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ٹھہرو کہ میں 18ویں منت تو بڑھا دوں ٹھہرو کہ میں 18ویں منت تو بڑھا دوں پھر لے کے بلائے تجھے جینے کی دعا دوں صدقے ہو یہ مادر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر کہتی تھی ماں خوب بھری میت سے لپٹ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر پہلے تو ایک آواز پہ اٹھ جاتے تھے بیٹا پہلے تو ایک آواز پہ اٹھ جاتے تھے بیٹا اب اتنی صداؤں پہ بھی پہلو نہیں بدلا کیا ہو گیا دل بر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر کہتی تھی ماں خون بھری میاں سے لپٹ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر تمہیں چیا لے لے کے جو دم توڑ رہے ہو تمہیں چیا لے لے کے جو دم توڑ رہے ہو منہ سے ہمیشہ کے لیے موڑ رہے ہو کیوں روتے ہو دل بھر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر کہتی تھی ماں خون بھری میاں سے لپٹ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر آئے جو ہمیں لوٹنے خیمے میں ستمگر آئے جو ہمیں لوٹنے خیمے میں ستمگر ماں دے گی صدا علی اکبر علی اکبر چھین جائے گی چادر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر کہتی تھی ماں خون بھری میاں سے لپٹ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ارمان تھا پہناؤں گی پوشاک شاہانی ارمان تھا پہناؤں گی پوشاک شاہانی افسوس کے راز آئی نہ تجھ کو یہ جوانی کیسا تھا مقدر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر کہتی تھی ماں خون بھری میاں سے لپٹ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر جب کوئی جوان لاش نظر آتی ہے محشر جب کوئی جوان لاش نظر آتی ہے محشر ایک یاد سوئے کرب و بلا جاتی ہے محشر دل روتا ہے کہہ کر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر ہائے ہائے علی اکبر
کڑی الزوا کی لاش پر کہتا رہا رو کر پدر آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر کڑی الزوا کی لاش پر کہتا رہا رو کر پدر آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے
بڑے نام مولا
ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر گرتا ہوا اٹھتا ہوا آ تو گیا ہوں میں مگر گم ہو گیا نور نظر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 تو نوجواں ہے اکبر اور ہے ضعیف بابا تو نوجواں ہے اکبر کیسے اٹھاؤ میت مجھ کو تو بتا دے اتنا جانا ہے اب خیال خم ہو گئی میری قمر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 آئی صدا جدھر سے میں اس طرف بڑھوں گا آئی صدا جدھر سے آواز سنتے سنتے تجھے رل میں ڈھونڈ ہی لوں گا تو ہے جدھر پیارے میرے دھیرے سے یہ کہتے ہوئے بابا ادھر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 صغرا کے نام بھر کو خط کا جواب کیا دوں صغرا کے نام بھر کو جو منتظر ہے اس کو برچھی کا حال سنا دوں رستے سے اب نظریں ہٹا مارا گیا بھائی تیرا کیا بھیج دوں اس کو خبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 تیری صدا کو سن کر وہ پھر سے جی اٹھے گی تیری صدا کو سن کر ہمشیر تیری ورنہ شاید نہیں جی پائے گی سینے کی برچھی تھام کے صغرا کو اس کے نام سے ایک بار ہمت جوڑ کر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 برچھی سے بس کلیجا تیرا نہیں چھدا ہے برچھی سے بس کلیجا مقتل میں فاطمہ نے دل اپنا تھام لیا ہے بھائی حسن نانا نبی بابا علی دادی تیری موجود ہیں سب ہی ادھر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 کیسے بیاں کروں میں وہ دردناک منظر کیسے بیاں کروں میں سکتے میں تھی خدائی روتا تھا سارا لشکر جب فاطمہ کے لال نے ہاتھوں پہ لے کر خاک سے رکھ کر کہا زانوں پہ سر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 لاشے کے دونوں جانب بیٹھی ہے مائیں دونوں لاشے کے دونوں جانب سینے پہ بوسے دے کر لیتی ہے بلائیں دونوں زینب ادھر لیلا ادھر چومے تیرا زخمی جگر ان سے تو کوئی بات کر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر 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 جناب اکبر خاموش ہو گئے تھے
اکبر جناب اکبر
شبیر سر جھکائے لاشے کے پاس کھڑے تھے زینب کبھی لیلا کبھی بہنیں کبھی نام بھر کہتا رہا یہ سارا گھر ہے
آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر آواز تو دے
18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ شیلاتے ہیں ہم شکل پیمبر کا جنازہ پیمبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ خیمے میں علم آیا ہے کوہرام ہے برپا کوہرام ہے برپا دریا پا ہے عباس دلاور کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ اس درجہ سکینہ سے تھا شرمندہ علمدار شرمندہ علمدار چلا نہ سکے آپ نے برادر کا جنازہ برادر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ اے کل کے مددگار مدد کرنے کو آؤ مدد کرنے کو آؤ شبیر سے اٹھتا نہیں اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ کیا ظلم ہے ٹپتی ہوئی ریتی پہ پڑا ہے ریتی پہ پڑا ہے بے گورو کفن سے پیمبر کا جنازہ اکبر کا جنازہ 18 برس کے علی اکبر کا جنازہ
محمد صلوات
السلام علیکم ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیکم ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیکم یا غریب الغرباء، السلام علیکم من وظوفاء الفقراء، السلام علیکم شمس الشموس، السلام علیکم نیس النفوس، السلام علیکم ایها المدفوع مردتوس، السلام علیکم یا مغیث الشیط وزوارفی ملتزا، السلام علیکم سلطان عرب البرجم، السلام علیکم ابوالحسن علی بن وسی رضا، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیکم صاحب العرص والزمان، الامان 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 الامان، السلام علیکم خلیفۃ الرحمان، السلام علیکم شیخ القرآن، السلام علیکم مظہر الایمان، السلام علیکم امام سے الجان، اجل اللہ تعالیٰ فرجک وصلی اللہ تعالیٰ مخرجک وظہورک وجعل من وعلیکم انصارک ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ.